Okay, welcome to this week's edition of the Data Value Show. I've given up trying to count now, but it's nearly 50, I think, but I haven't checked to see what number we're up to now. And it's Labor Day, so anyone tuning in from the USA, I hope you're enjoying your day off. But today we're going to be talking about building a culture and alignment and agility. And I have Roger Longdon to talk about that today. So, hey, Roger, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's very apt, and I think we had our little pre-chat before, and there's a bit of a buzz and talk about how we can create a culture where the engineering and data world work closer with the business. So I normally start with a bit of how we met. So we met via a good friend of ours, Sonia. I think she's changed her surname now, so I can't remember. It's on a Blindfeld it was. But so she used to help us with our people and culture internally. And she recommended we talk, and we had a little bit of a chat, and the rest is history. But for the audience, do you want to give yourself a bit of an intro, a bit of background, and talk about There Be Giants?
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody wants to know, I'll be happy to explain where the name comes from, because I usually get asked that. So yeah, I mean, There Be Giants has been in existence for not far off 15 years now in various guises. But we, having started as a coaching business, we evolved into a strategic execution consultancy, which sounds very grand, but it isn't really. What I noticed was in a lot of the work that I was doing, particularly with high growth technology businesses, was that particularly as they perhaps received investment, there'd be a massive step change in the size and complexity of the organization. And often the founders were really struggling to deal with that. And they were struggling to keep their arms around it. And the old ways of, just all getting it because there's only, 10 of you in a room together, and, the communication is just organic and just, natural, just doesn't work anymore. So the question was, how do you work with them to help them scale up and help the organization mature, but not become corporate? They wanted to still obviously keep their entrepreneurialism and their agility. And so I went on a bit of a quest to find out how larger organizations that are known for being innovative and agile and responsive, how do they do it? What is it they're doing that the majority aren't?
Yep.
And that's when I came across, and this was back in about sort of late 2016, early 2017, objectives and key results. And I thought, this is interesting, because if these are used well, it's a bit like Star Wars and the Force. There's a good side and a dark side to them. If they're misused, they can be just as counterproductive as any management approach that's misused. But if they're used well, they can be a benefit to the business, to leadership, and to the teams as well. So I thought potentially there's a win-win in this for everyone. So started to use it with clients, because I was seeing that what was happening was that, it didn't matter how wonderfully detailed, how finely presented and finely tuned your strategy and planning was. If it fell over as soon as it came into contact with day-to-day reality, then it really wasn't worth anything. And so I started kind of working on my first iteration of an OKR methodology with clients way back then. And it's just evolved ever since. We were amongst the first to use them in the UK, arguably probably amongst the first in Europe. And the market has developed quite considerably since then. John Doerr did us all the favor and wrote his bestseller in 2019. And that got onto the New York Times bestseller list for business books, and that raised the profile of objectives and key results. And since then, the business has evolved in that we very much still work at the founder rapid growth end of the spectrum, but we also work with larger corporates now. And this was a change that happened around the time of the pandemic and lockdown, actually. which I've got to say, fortunately, like probably most business owners, you go into that period thinking, am I going to have a business when this is all
Yeah.
over?
Yeah.
But it was actually really good to us because, first of all, the whole of my team already worked from home. We were already home based. We've never had an office, so there was no adjustment for us to have to go through in that respect. Secondly, we started getting approaches from large corporates saying, we hadn't actually got the means and the methods by which to keep our teams, who are now all remote, on track, focused, connected.
Yep.
And we've heard about this thing called OKRs. Can we use that for them? Of course they can. Yeah, absolutely. So we started to do a lot of work at the corporate end of the spectrum. And since then, that's also grown. And we've developed a partnership with Microsoft around one of their products in the Viva suite, their Viva Goals product. And we've got a few other partnerships with software providers as well. So, yeah, we work, like I say, at both ends of the spectrum. And always with the aim of either retaining agility and alignment, or kind of reinstilling agility and alignment where perhaps it once was, but they want to, reclaim it.
Yeah, thanks for that. A bit of a background and overview, and linked to the conversation we just had in the green room, if we call it, or backstage. Not quite as cool as backstage in a club or something. But anyway, we were discussing KPIs, and also we're also discussing how engineering teams, if they have better understanding of why they're doing what they're doing, and how it is part of a bigger objective to help them be more efficient, be more productive, feel more involved, help with that culture and help with that, us and them, it's one team, it is a team with a mixed martial arts team, you're bringing the best skills from each of the areas for you to complete the objectives. And as a business owner myself, and helping companies over the years, larger ones, smaller ones, navigate that route to success is all that's been sort of my sweet spot of where I normally focus on, but normally from an architecture's perspective, but helping talk that business language. And it's hard. it's hard to get everyone all on the same page. And I think things evolve, and we talked about Conway's law as well, that organization shifts in its structure, and the underlying systems and business processes are slower to respond. So you're in that two-tier stage where, all right, I have to do the official route, but now I need to know how I just get stuff done. So you're massaging the machine to get it to make you what you want, which is not the most effective use of your time. I like to use the term friction. It's added friction, time, complexity, effort to do that particular activity. So talk to me. Well, KPIs is where I cut my teeth back in the day, because in that smaller BI world, we created KPIs. I think then, each of the eras have had its shortfalls. We were probably close to the business end, but I don't think it was ever linked up to, what I say, the next level up, which would be OKRs. The level up from that be a business strategy. Would that be the right way to start?
So if I had a pound for every time I was asked what's the difference between a KPI and an OKR, I wouldn't need to work, to be honest. And to be honest, I have a lot of sympathy for people who kind of struggle to get it at first glance, because they can look like it's just a rebadging of the same thing, and the latest trend, so to speak. But they genuinely are different, and they have an interplay, a very, very strong relationship, and they should coexist together. Now, KPIs are often associated with what you might say operational, tactical measurement. And they're the ones that kind of tell you whether the business is healthy. So if let's think of this in the context of you sat in the driving seat of your car and you're looking at your dashboard, right? The information that is presented to you immediately in your line of sight, that you need to know from day to day, from hour to hour, from minute to minute, or second to second if you're driving the car, is, you know, how fast you're going, how much gas you've got in the tank, or even charge you've got in the battery these days, and that's all really, really useful. But it doesn't tell you which direction to go in. No. Obviously, that's your sat nav, and
yeah,
no prizes for guessing what really OKRs represent. They represent your sat nav. Yeah,
got you.
And if you find, I mean, you set your sat nav for your ultimate destination, so that's, you know, that's your long-term plan. That's where you finally want to get to, and you might have a number of waypoints along the way to show that you're on the right track. Yeah.
Yep.
And you might actually, when you get to one waypoint, decide, actually, we're going to take a slightly different path, but we're still going to get to the same finishing point. So that's building agility into it. Okay, that's building, because you can learn from, you know, what you've done so far, and that feedback loop can help you adapt, you know, for the next stage of the journey, so to speak. However, if you start to run low on gas, there's nothing to stop you from just reprogramming your sat nav to find the nearest gas station. Yeah. So immediately your priorities change. Got to fill up the tank. But as soon as your tank's full again, you just revert back to what your final destination was. So that hopefully illustrates the interplay between the two. You know, all of a sudden, if you're low on gas, the amount in your tank, even though it's a KPI, suddenly becomes an OKR because it needs that spotlight.
I like that analogy. I've used similar ones for a cockpit in an airplane, but not use the directional part. So I think that's a really good addition to it. Is, you know, the OKRs are setting direction, and you could change it. You know, the airport's not the one you want to get to in the end. You know. Hopefully, maybe other reasons your airport gets diverted. You're playing it diverted. Hopefully, it's not that. You know, it's just, you know, bad weather or something. But yeah, and I think that's all about, and taking that analogy further. You've got the vehicle, you've got the team that is able to adjust and pivot. They know the general direction, but to have a slight correction, or again to avoid that bumpy, you know, that the air pockets and the bumpy route, you might take, you know, fly around it. It's the same thing with your strategy. Is, you know, you work on something, you find out a particular technology doesn't deliver the requirements you expected. If you built in that agility, you go, okay, well, we will pivot now. We're not going to try and wedge a let's go and do an add-on or enhance it so it can facilitate that. Yeah, so I like that differentiator between the two. Something I just jotted down when I was you were talking through, and I think I did a post about this a little while ago, actually during the pandemic, and it was when KPIs go toxic, and it was triggered by. I was stuck in a ski resort during pandemic. All right, yeah, I know. But on the slopes, I was the only one out there. I realised how boring skiing is if you're just on your own, and also how dangerous it could be if you go too far off. So I was sticking to the same slope. I was just going up and down, up and down. What I found myself doing was just racing myself. All I was doing, let me see if I can get 100 kilometers an hour again. And down again. I was getting closer and closer, but I was also getting closer and closer to the limit of the length of the run, how long I could stop, maybe the tiredness in my legs. So during that period, I went, when KPIs turn toxic, what I should be focusing on, enjoyment factor, seeing different things, you know, learning new techniques, you know, my stamina, building, rather than focusing on one thing that could make or break. You know what I mean? And I've been there before. If you push yourself too much. I think when I'm on a half pipe, I thought I could do flipping stupid jumps, and I broke my arm on it. So, you know, there's but back to the business aspect. Yeah, different departments sometimes can set KPIs that are at the pulse of the organisation at that particular time. Yeah, and that could change. And unfortunately, when you bonus people, or when their their objectives are all being set and they're set ahead of time and it's set to a particular KPIs that are all set in place. If your organisation's moved on quicker and you've lost that, you've got so big, there's no the disconnect there now. I didn't even know that was set there. I don't know these people their objectives are to do that, but it can have a counterproductive. So you've created a scenario where people are doing things that are going to have a negative impact maybe on another department, and then therefore have a negative impact on the end client, but unknowingly. So so how do you maintain linking and keeping everyone aligned to what their KPIs are, how it's aligned to the OKRs, how an organisation is structured?
Wow, there's a very big question. Okay, so right, where to start with that one? So first of all, you mentioned about how you can end up with perhaps you mentioned bonuses. That always focuses the mind if
it does, yeah.
If a measure's tagged to a particular bonus, which it often is. First of all, I would say, do your absolute best to move away from individual measures, right?
Yep.
The team is the unit of performance nowadays, not really the individual. Yep. Okay. And arguably, there's perhaps a bit more of a case for it still to remain individual in a sales capacity.
Yeah.
But even so, I think
it should be a persona. It's different industry or whatever, but it's that sort of. Yeah, I get you. Yeah,
100%. Now, in terms of whether you should tie, and this is a debate that has raged for the ages. This has, but in terms of whether you should tie OKRs to compensation, reward, bonus, so on and so forth, that has to be approached with a very, very large degree of caution, because as soon as people sense that there is a risk that they are putting their pay, their bonus, perhaps even maybe their promotion at risk, they are not going to be ambitious in what they try to achieve.
Yep.
Okay.
Very true.
They are going to set the bar at a nice, safe level, and the chances are you'll get mediocre results.
Yep.
And the whole point of OKRs is that you're looking to stretch. You're looking for that to be on a team basis. You're looking for it to not be handed down from leadership to management to teams. It's not a cascade, and I just want to actually really make that point, because I personally hate the term cascade. I know it's used a lot in strategy, but I really
should we run that down the flagpole?
Please do, because that to me implies that it is done to you. It's coming down whether you like it or not, and it's being done to you. Whereas the absolutely the highest performing teams, the most effective implementations of OKRs that we've done have been where the teams have looked at the challenge and have then worked out what the best solution is for them to overcome that challenge or seize that opportunity. Okay. And because it's their solution, they have a greater buy-in to seeing it happen. And with that stretch that comes with the setting of the key results, if they fall short, okay, it should be calibrated at a point where falling short by, I don't know, 20%, whatever, is still a really solid result and does not mean a loss for the business, right? The 100% really represents, right, if all the stars are in alignment, if all the lights were on green, if everybody delivered on time, nobody was off ill, everything happened as planned, what's theoretically possible. Because if you have that and then you get to the end of the period and all right, you've fallen short by 10, 15%, it still gives you the chance to step back and go, right, guys, huge, thumbs up for where you got to, because that gave us a really solid result. But can we just take a moment to just think what could have potentially got us to that 100%? Because that then gives you the opportunity to learn and then play that back in through the feedback loop for the next time. Okay. So that's a really important part. Now, I'm conscious I might have gone off down a little bit of a diversion there because you were asking about alignment. Okay, what do we do to keep alignment? Well, actually, no, I'm going to actually just go back to something I did
This is
say.
all solid. Don't worry. Keep it's good. It's
good. Something I did say, which was to like my distaste for the term cascade. How do you? I mean, cascading implies alignment, but that's kind of forced alignment. Yeah. You build alignment that is bought into, that is welcomed, that is owned, if you will, by, like I say, setting that challenge and then saying, right, okay, folks, work out what the solution is to overcome that challenge, and then what are the measures of evidence that we have been successful in overcoming that challenge. And that's how you because it's that process.
Yeah.
This is another reason why it's a wasted opportunity if you're handing OKRs out to people. It's that process of forming them. It's that thought process of exploring the possibilities and then working and then selecting the one that you're going to go with, and then working out what those measures of evidence are, rather than actions. Because that's, I was just talking to a client earlier on today, and the leadership team have done their OKRs, and they got what we meant by outcomes, which are what we want to see results. But the next level down, I've had to. I'm working on coaching them through a real mindset shift, because for key results, they just wanted to write action plans, and I'm like, no. If you, the point is, if you do that action plan, how do you know it's been worth it? What's the evidence that tells you that it's been successful?
Sorry, I just jumped on the evidencing, and it was just going through my mind as there is that we're working on a strapline statement for what business value was, and unfortunately, engineers and data teams have had to justify their existence, probably because of that lack of understanding of how they're used by the business, and associating it to any successes they've got, that lineage or traceability back to the difference that they make. But so the definition we gave of business value was an evidenceable positive effect on your business objectives or business performance, because your objectives as an organization can vary so differently. Some of your objectives may not be linked to actually making a profit or a monetary value. It could be emissions, or it could be customer satisfaction, and that's not a monetary. That's a target that is not. It's not a monetizable sort of value you can give to it. And so I think the key, with any, so taking it up to the next level of OKR, you need to capture those results and be able to evidence those results. So when you go back and play subsequent years or subsequent iterations, right, how have I moved the dial? Have we been, or did we move it the wrong way? All right, and how we do that corrective measure. So I think that's another thing that I've seen many times in organizations with different hats on, as VP of engineering or CTO or head of this. I went to so many presentations where I'll pick on the marketing team came along and said, give us Salesforce, do this, do that. It's going to add 50 million revenue in 2-3 years. And never did it do that, and never did they actually track the ability to evidence where they were going to get to. And I think that's tainted the data world or tech world by some people going, oh, it never delivers what they promise. So having those results collected from those OKRs is critical to.
And this is where, I mean, 100%, this is where data is so important when it comes to OKRs, because OKRs should have a metric in them. And you know what, it happens so often, Chris, that when we put together, particularly at higher level, a more strategic level OKRs, that may have a time frame of a year or sometimes even longer. The key result that is suggested is actually one that is a measure that doesn't exist yet, and so they either have to go away and find the data, dig deep for it, or they have to actually create the mechanism to capture the data.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's critical to it. You know, when you're saying definition of done, am I done? Yeah, can I evidence what I've done? If you can't evidence what you've done, you're not done. You know?
Yeah. You know, I'm working with a client at the moment. You know, very large. Well, I suppose it depends on how you define large. 20,000 people worldwide. Okay, big enough. Big. In the, I can't say which sector they're in because there aren't that many organisations in that sector, but they're a big information systems company, right? Okay, in a specific sector globally, and we started work on their 3-year OKRs. Which are their strategic level. They have 5-year pillars, which are their 5-year aspirations, and then they've framed a 3-year ambitions. But it is they've had to put a whole project together to nail down the mechanisms for measuring the data that is going to represent, you know, provide the evidence to show progress.
If they need any help, give us a shout.
But the point is that's what's needed. I mean, further down when we get to the 12-month level, tons of data, no problem at all. At that level, because we're talking about things like measuring the impact of innovation.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not something which is, I mean, what do you do? Do you measure the number of patents that have been lodged? Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah. But that only feels like it's part of the picture.
Yeah.
You know, not every single innovation may lead to a patent, but you may actually still. Yeah. I'm no expert in that, but they have some very big brain people that are solving that problem. But the point being that the data isn't always available, so there's often a very big requirement to actually you know, either dig deep for it or go and put the measures in the mechanism in place to capture it.
You brought up two things that I had already had notes that I'd take as we're going through, and that was the time dimension to things. And again, when I was doing some research on, just probably general research, when you go to an organisation, you're talking to, say, for example, the CDOs, who do you report to? You know, and that could influence what power or ability they have to actually make any decisions, or get the budget, even more so. So, so there's a whole, depending on where they report. So, for example, if that company needs to make a difference to the bottom line this year, the CFO's the only person that's actually going to sign that stuff off. If the CDO doesn't report to the CFO, they're not going to be able to get, they're not going to, any planned, strategic stuff's not going to happen. So, and I think the other thing that time dimension aspect is, you're taking a team on your journey with you, and unfortunately, some of the things that may be in year 3 in your target, you need to probably find out what things are going to fuel that you can then help your teams be bonus or targeted on, that actually will get you to that end piece. Because some people, you think, oh, what, I'm working at year 3, well, I don't know if I'll even be here then, or things like that. So everyone needs to be focused on a particular year, or activities within a year that is going to lead on to the bigger picture. And
absolutely. And this is where it's really important to always chunk down. And I use that example of a very large organization that's gone for 3 years and 12 months. For small to medium-sized organizations of up to maybe 1,000, couple of thousand people, we usually find that 12 months and then a level of either 3 or 4 months is what's needed. Because what happens at that 3 to 4 month level is that you've got something which has been chunked down, which is focused enough for people to actually feel like they can get the teeth into it, and they can get some traction with that. And they have, obviously, because it's running for either 3 or 4 months, that allows them the opportunity for that feedback loop to guide and inform where they should go next, because they're learning from, they're learning iteratively as they progress through. So
I'm gonna go, because she's had 2 comments now, even though it comes up as LinkedIn user. I'm tracking, so I'm gonna address one of her questions and answer the other one. But before we do that, I want to when we come back, I want to pick up on that. I just made a note of agile to waterfall, because what we're talking about is a lot more planning activities which had been forgotten to some degree in this agile world, and I'm going to get bashed a little bit on this, especially if probably my New Zealand friend Shane Gibson's listening. Let's park that. I'm going to make a note. We'll come back to how we still keep that agile but have more of a structured planning. But I'm going to put this question up first of all. We'll absorb it first. We'll give you a chance to look through it. So this is going back when we're talking about the dashboards, and this is Ramona. Ramona was a guest a few weeks ago, long time follower, major commenter. Always interesting stuff though.
Yeah, I really like this question. So well done for raising it. I think it's maybe an extension to the analogy.
She's good at these.
Yeah. So the general sense of the direction is the key, are the key words in that question, because when you talk about alignments, and this is a conversation I've had only in just the past week or so, if you try and align it in absolute precise detail to a parent, so in other words, the next level up, OKR, you try and absolutely calibrate your key result to absolutely, the one above, that way lies madness. Really, it does. It's about aligning with the intent.
Yeah.
Okay. It's about aligning with the intent. So understanding the general sense of direction is really important. And also for another reason as well, which is the larger the organization, the more people, and I'm probably going to raise a few eyebrows saying this, but the more people who won't be within scope of the official aligned OKRs. If I may, I'll just tell you a very quick little story. So about just before lockdown, I was working with a software company of about 3,000 people. And unfortunately, they'd gone down the route 6 months earlier of buying a system and thinking that was going to be the answer. Yeah. And they'd set it up, and they'd ended up with like literally 1,500 people trying to align directly into the CEO's OKRs. It was an absolute mess, complete mess. And they'd also said as well, and this is often the case when I'm sorry, but when HR lead on OKRs, this is often the case because they kind of get mixed up with performance management and individual objectives.
I agree. I've seen it before.
Yeah, and this organization had said, right, everybody needs an OKR. And so what had happened was that they got themselves onto a 3-month cycle. So they'd gone from kind of resetting objectives on a 12-month basis to actually 4 times every 12 months, and that just lost the management community completely. They were just like, well, this is ridiculous. We can't cope with that. So the more that you've got what we call hard aligned, in other words, there's a direct relationship between that child OKR and the parent OKR. The more work you have to do when you review and reset each time you get to the end of a cycle. So the key thing is to keep those as few as possible and as focused as possible. But then what happens to the rest of the teams outside that fall out of that particular scope? Well, this is where the general sense of direction is important, because you have perhaps a more operationally focused team that are focused on tactical activity, but if there is a particular strategic priority around I don't know, improving customer service or improving customer experience in some respects, they, even though they might not be directly aligned, they probably could still contribute quite a lot to that. So there's an opportunity for them to say, right, what can we do in our team that's in general support of what that ambition is for the business? So they then work their own local OKR, is what we'd say. Yeah. So there's a few different things going on there, but I think that's a really good one. Now, the question about whether shouldn't resilience be the top metric? Your resilience is super important, and I guess it depends on how, in terms of what aspects of resilience are you referring to. If you're referring to the ability for the organization to keep on track irrespective of whether things go down or whether things come along, this is what really clear communication and the process of alignment helps with, because it helps people understand what the priorities are and helps them explore what their contribution towards those priorities can be.
I'm going to add to this analogy, and we'll get a sense if we're on. I'm sure she'll comment again, or I'll speak to her later. So if you think of the vehicle, that's taking us on this destination, all right. So it's got the standard dashboard on there. We can add our own iPhone that's got a special source on it that's giving a GPS and things like that. We could move that to another vehicle, right, quite easily, or we could enhance the vehicle we're in. And I suppose it's having that that technology, agnostic or technology. You don't really care what vehicle you're in. You need to make sure the vehicle is the right vehicle for this leg of the journey that can get you in the direction as quick as possible. And this is like the friction of changing a vehicle. You've got to find the vehicle, you've got to buy the vehicle. The friction of improving your vehicle, enhancing you're doing the chip on it, or you're gonna put a supercharge on it or something like that. Nitro bottle or whatever, if we're going to go fast and furious style. But I think that's another dimension to it, which I think from my architecture technology lens, and that's where you need to make sure that your business is comfortable with the vehicle that's taking it there, but it's also flexible enough to move across or adapt to any enhancements that are made to that vehicle. So we hope we answer that, Ramon. I'm gonna go on to the other one quickly and be a quick one. Yes, you're right. I chose the wrong example. Customer satisfaction could actually link to an increase in sales or number of customers you get, but it will be another calculation afterwards what that value is. We won't go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to go back.
But just before you move on from this, though, this poses an interesting one. So your question about engineering teams earlier on. How common would it be for an engineering team to monitor some sort of measure around customer satisfaction in relation to a new release, a new feature, a new version? Because that's why they're doing it, to improve perhaps the user experience.
But, you'd like. I've worked in some places where there's an A/B testing for that sort of stuff, or you take feedback when they're releasing there, you thumbs up, you're like, or you release it to a pool of people and you get their feedback. So, in that release cycle, it's and that's probably more from I suppose there's many ways. The customer could be, for example, using the e-commerce. So it's the fact that you do deliver on time, your product's good, and things like that. So, So you're right, Ramona. I want to come back to that. I've called it fragile in the past, like waterfall agile or wagile,
Wagile.
And I've gone down this one before, where I've bashed the days of the fact we're all in OPEX mode and everyone's just happy to pay the AWS bill or Azure bill or GCP bill. Whereas before, you had to do strategic planning for projects. You had a lot of planning activity, probably too detailed, but you had to because of the cost of the investment that was going in. You didn't have the board wouldn't agree to giving away millions of pounds unless they had these details. And unfortunately, we've lost control a little bit. I think that's why we've got like FinOps and FinOps analysis now, of looking at cloud spend analysis, and is a whole new system you need, or a new function you need now to actually calculate all these costs and recharge it back. But I do see, companies having a little bit more of a planning stage, maybe delivering it more agile, but more accountability, delivering things on a certain time. So I believe that the data ops approach and continuous deployments has enabled us to probably have been more predictive than we may have been in the past. But why I went to this is what we're talking about: setting these OKRs and then setting any associated timeline to them, then the associated KPIs that may be underpinning them. Another thought I had a minute ago about levels of hierarchies. It may be that the KPIs are the thing that can actually connect things in it from the hierarchies rather than the OKRs. They're quite flat, the OKRs, but if you wanted to have any sort of like roll up or something, you could use KPIs for
KPIs do tend to be more hierarchical.
I'll give you I'll pause then. I'll give you an example of what we did one time at a German car manufacturer, should we call it anyway? And it was, they wanted to get the best use out of each of their regional managers, and the regional managers need to get the best of their dealers, and the dealers need to make sure that they were performing most within their region. So we actually set these KPIs at. It was a really, really interesting. It was many years. Maybe it was Computer Weekly before it was on the web, so it was that old. But it was. You could go down to a particular brand. You could have new and old of it. You'd have the parts of it. We also put like customer staff retention in there. And that's when I realised that staff retention. You can have a green that can be zeros, not good. If you're zero, it means no one's ever leaving, no one's ever gone. That's probably a bad thing. You need to have some turnover. Otherwise, you're paying them all too much, or something's not right. But then you have too many, so there's a sweet spot of how much is a tolerance. And so we built all these, and they had hierarchies like level 3, level 2, level 1 to level 0, which was the center, and then that all rolled up to the each of the regions. I've gone off on a slight tangent there because I'm talking about KPI level. But back to the sorry about that. Back to the waterfall planning activities. So do you see? Is that something you're seeing now and before? Is that there's less acceptance just to go full agile and everyone just get on with it, and now things are having to be more linked to these OKRs?
Yeah, I am seeing. I mean, I've always described OKRs as applying agile principles to the way you run the business, not just the way you run your projects. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
Yeah. And I think agile still very much has its place in engineering, definitely.
Yeah.
And even looking at it in scale, you've got frameworks like SAFe as well, which take agile to very much a corporate framework.
Have you ever seen on that SAFe picture? Have you looked to see where the business are involved in it? It's just one. It's only, you see all the roles on there. There's just one.
Yeah.
So I'm correct me if I'm wrong. Any SAFe experts out there, but I think you've got to. I think you've left the business out a little bit too much of it. But anyway, I might be wrong.
So there's, I think what OKR's done well, and obviously I will naturally say done in the way that we advocate. They help frame the strategy. They help communicate what the general direction of travel should be, to come back to that point earlier, and the key priorities within that general direction of travel are what we call spotlighted.
Yep.
Right. And that's what I mean, coming back to the point when I come back to the point earlier about not everyone in the organization is going to be in scope. A spotlight doesn't illuminate the whole stage. It illuminates the part where the action's happening. So in other words, in a business context, the activity which is going to drive the greatest value for us in the next 12 months or whatever. And so the people that can make the greatest contribution to that are the ones that are in the spotlight, and they're the ones that have a hard alignment into whatever the ambition is for that. So the agile, so there's kind of a planning element there, but the agile aspect is retained by the fact that you're working on a cyclical basis. So you're not planning. Yeah, you set an outcome that you want to achieve for the 12 months, but you're not actually stipulating, and we will do it by doing step 1, step 2, step 3.
So it's not as onerous as the plan.
No.
I've taken it a bit too far. Sorry.
Yeah. So you for instance, you've got your 12-month ambition, and you say, right, what can we do in the first 3 months? What are the opportunities or challenges that we need to overcome in the first 3 months, and what's the measures of what's the 3 months measure of evidence there? And then as you're getting towards the end of that period, you say, right, okay, how are we doing? Are we where we thought we wanted to be? What else has come along in that period? What do we know now that we didn't know before? Right. And what does this mean? Right. Let's reset for the second period. And then you go through that again. So there is an iterative, arguably agile approach to getting to that finishing point that you've set for yourself, that ambition for the 12 months. So there is a degree of planning, but also a degree of agility in this as well.
Got you. Yeah. And Martin, worked with before, and I think we're catching up soon. Yeah, safe is not agile. I think I'll have to agree with him there as well. We can discuss this at the meetup on the 12th, Martin. So.
It's interesting because they call themselves Scale. SAFE stands for Scaled Agile Framework.
Yeah. I think it. Yeah. We'll take it off. I think they've gone a bit too far with it.
I think in a corporate context, I think it's potentially agile compared to what perhaps they've had in the past.
It's acceptable agile for maybe a large organization. So So I think so I think one other thing I had wrote earlier, and when you were talking about innovation mapping, which was quite and I've got, in fact, my presentation, which I need to polish off as well. I'm doing at Big Data London is foundations that can force multiply your delivery, and more maybe not. Well, I suppose not sure if this affects OKRs or the delivery of OKR. I think it does actually affect the delivery of OKRs. So having a runway of, back to that car analogy of having the right car for the right part of the journey at the right time. It's a roadmap. I think I refer to it as just enough architecture, or just enough approach. So you have just enough data, you have just enough size team, just enough skill at just enough time to go and deliver everything. To I suppose it's similar to lean manufacturing. Taking some of the aspects from that, and you go and get the chassis first of all that you can go and enhance other things. To put that in place, it's going to be an overhead, but adding it's a force multiplier, because it will allow you to mix and match other components quicker, more efficiently, faster, to build up your vehicle over time. So I think when at that top level, I think sometimes it can create a behavior where, we're not going to do that because it kind of costs too much money. But they're not looking at the bigger picture. They say, yes, it probably is costing enough in if you're looking at it just from what you're going to get now. But if you're looking at what you're going to be able to get month 6, month 9, month 12, means it's actually allowed us to do all these other things later. If we just stick on what was there at the moment, we're going to have to bite the bullet at some stage, and by then it's going to be much harder to move across. We're not going to move as quick. So I think it's that curve. You invest early in foundations, and cost you less later, rather than a flat line of just spending what you need at the right time. So it's not in quite conflict with just enough architecture, but just enough in a way that you can modularly improve it or build on top of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, I don't. Would you say that? Is there a lens, or is that something that's looked at when maybe setting OKRs over a longer period of time? So to get to by year 3, I know I need to achieve all these other foundational pieces that are going to enable that.
Yeah. I mean, OKRs can be used in many different ways, and if an organization knows that to get to where they want to within 3 years, they've got a number of milestones which they need to achieve, a number of key points they need to hit, then absolutely they can craft their shorter term OKRs around hitting those.
Okay.
And I've talked about there being 2 levels. I mean, that's where I would always suggest that clients start when they're kind of cutting their teeth and building up their confidence with them. But then it's often the case that maybe after maybe 12 months or maybe a couple of years that they might actually go down another level as well. What you've got to remember is, though, that you're increasing the overhead in terms of what needs to be reviewed and reset each time you come to the end of a cycle. But yeah, if the organization is getting slicker at doing that, then yeah, you can go down to the next level, which means that you are going down to an even shorter time frame. Personally, myself, I wouldn't go any shorter than 3 months.
Right. Okay.
I think
it's too micro, too
granular,
it's
too micro. It becomes too action planish, and as soon as you kind of got the quarter started, within a matter of weeks, you're having to think about the next one, and if you're shorter than 3 months. So yeah. That's
so I've got one more chain of thought, and if anyone puts any more questions in, we'll try and address them before. Oh, I've just accidentally added that. Let me do that. And as you're talking about the setting of these OKRs, and what I've always found in organisations, including myself, is that the more you include people on the journey, the more that they buy into it, and the more involved they feel, the more that valued they are as well.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking of a racy. I like to go back to I'm old. I like to go back to the good old days of who's responsible, accountable, contributors, or collaborated with and informed. So when setting these OKRs, obviously there's certain people need to be setting them, but certain people probably need to have a little look at them, agree to them as well. Would you normally say, look, here you go, here's the OKRs, this is like a race? Would you put a racy on there to say who should be included? And who?
We don't use the racy template itself, but we do very much have specific roles within the OKR teams,
right?
Which clearly illustrate who's responsible.
So that you could map it onto. You could reverse engineer it. So it's there, but by sort of
because
you don't want to say race. They look too old now. They're too.
Because I mean, if you take an OKR at the second level down, not the strategic level, but at the second level, which is what we tend to call the sort of cross-functional level, because this is where you've got a team that's focused on the OKR, not a functional team. And I need to make that distinction, but an OKR team, or some might even, to pinch an agile term, some even choose to call it an OKR squad. Okay.
Right.
But you've got within that, you've got the objective lead, and you've also got key result owners. And they are made up typically of people from different functions that are coming together to work on that shared objective. And this is transformational for a lot of organizations, because it breaks through the silos. We did a project with a very large telecommunications company here in the UK that does a lot of broadband that everybody's heard of, probably everybody uses. And they had product teams and sales teams that were literally at war with each other, because the sales had a target for products which hadn't even been released yet. And they were part
set
of
themselves up for failure. So it's
and the after we helped them put OKRs in place, we got they started to work towards shared objectives with these cross-functional teams in place, and it massively helped the collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And cut down on the certainly on the conflicts, and ultimately, that's wasted energy in the organization.
Oh, exactly. It's bad energy as well. So
exactly. Yeah. So that is a really, really important part. So being very clear about the roles within those teams, and making sure that they are the ones that are not necessarily, if you're a key result owner, it doesn't mean to say that you're doing all the work on that key result. You may have a whole heap of people and teams inputting into your key result, but you've kind of got a view over what's going on, and you own the reporting of it, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I've learned some stuff. So we'll probably start to, rather than get onto another topic, we'll go over, and I've got a hard stop in 5 minutes. We're on the call, but so that's been fantastic. I learned some things here, Roger. It all makes a lot of sense. I think we just need to get companies to buy into it, and the world will be a better place. So,
more and more are slowly.
It's good to hear. And as long as they're able to evidence it, and we can help with the evidencing, I think they'll be in a good place. For the audience and anyone that watches in the future, where's the best place for them to find you? Have you got any events coming up, or you where you based and things like that?
Yeah, so therebegiants.com is always a good place to start, or you can find me specifically on LinkedIn. And in terms of events, we're not actually running any at the moment. We haven't got any diarised at the moment, mainly because we're doing so much work overseas. We're traveling quite a bit at the moment, we're always open to approaches in whatever shape or form. And also, I must put in a shameless plug for our podcast as well.
Please do. And add it to the links in this one afterwards, so you can put it in the comments, and you can check those things out.
It's a podcast called Giant Talk, and it started off as it was the world's first, very first OKR podcast. But to be fair, and I admit this, there's only so many conversations you can have around OKR specifically. So it's kind of evolved into more around building alignment, what we do to in very much, exploring the topics that we've talked about here today. And just kind of unpicking those with key people as we go along. And we looked at it in the context of sport, in the context of the armed forces, and everything in between.
That's perfect. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
We weren't short of things to talk about, so it was a great conversation. I will try and get you to come to the Winter Data Conference. So shameless plug ourselves. Check out www.winterdataconference. We're live now, so check that out. And anyone, Big Data London on the 18th and 19th. You'll be able to find that we've got a booth there. The team will be there. We've turned it into the data clinic, so we're doing a drop-in session where you can make appointments to speak to our specialists. Our specialists are wearing the white lab coats, you'll know who they are. And lastly, I think on the 12th of September, we've got a meetup again. So anyone in and about London on the 12th, it's at the normal place. You'll find that details on our website, or reach out if you need any more info. So that's a wrap. Thank you again, Roger. Thanks everyone to tuning in. Thanks for the great questions, Ramona, as always, and Val and Martin and anyone else that was listening as well. So we'll call it a wrap. We'll end the show. Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.